Gonna start. Nick will tell us some exciting stuff regarding machine learning. Please welcome.
Hi. Good morning, maybe lunchtime-ish for most of you. I'm going to talk about machine learning. It's a very vague concept. I don't know if I ask to the audience who has worked with machine learning or AI before. One person, two people. I'm going to try to tell you that it's really not that hard. I'm going to tell you as well that you can use this in your Drupal projects and wow your customer in some sense. We implemented this, and I'll explain the details, for a hospital in Belgium where they had an audit from the government, and the results from their search pages on the website was not sufficient, and they actually lost money from the government because they weren't serving the public well enough. The results didn't float to the top. If they asked for what's my invoice or how does it look like, it didn't show up. So it's a really practical case on how to use machine learning in the real world today. So who am I? I'm Nick. I've been in the Drupal world for 12 years for now. I'm intending to stay a lot longer if it keeps evolving this way. And I started actually as an intern at Acquia with Search, and I ported the SOLR module from Drupal 6 to 7. I was also involved with Search API from 7 to 8, and then we merged the two modules. Some of you probably have been here since Drupal 7. You know that there were two modules. Some of you not. That's okay. Now there's only one, which is good, less confusing. So let's talk about some basic concepts. I was this morning in Oleg's session. He talked about very basic concepts of search, but you have to have those basic concepts to get started. See this session if you don't understand some concepts that I'm talking about, or ask him. He's sitting over there as well. Maybe also to get a sense of the audience. Who has or built search solutions in Drupal 8 today? Doesn't matter if it's custom or contrib. So most of you are technical audiences, right? All right. So I did some search on Drupal.org. I was trying to find a good example on how to show you how this is any relevant. But if you search for install Apache, you're actually finding an issue about this topic of learn to rank, about machine learning. How is this any relevant to how to install Apache? I don't think it is. So there are some issues. You actually expect this page to go to the top on how to get started with Drupal. All right. So the same for this hospital in Belgium. You can see that we've built a small application for the customer to make searches. And then they had to click on the results to say or tell us, yeah, this is relevant. No, this is really bad. So for example, they searched for some word that had to do something about invoicing. And you can see that this one is relevant, the middle one, and the top one. So it actually, those three had to be at the top. OK. In order to explain this to you, I'll try to make it like somewhat interactive. I've created a Drupal site. Maybe you recognize the team, Umami. You recognize that? And there's also a search in it. So I'll show you the site. So this is the Umami site with recipes from Spain and everywhere. By default, there's only 10 recipes in there. So I migrated 600 recipes in the Umami site, because otherwise the search wouldn't be very efficient or very interesting. So if you go to the search, you can find a whole bunch of things. Say an ingredient. Sorry? Potato. Potato. Am I not spelling it right? Potato. No potatoes. I know there's cake. Oh, it's not working. Aye. Always the same with these demos, eh? let's see what's wrong. All right, I'll continue for now. Is there something wrong with the internet by any chance? Well, in any case, chocolate cake here. So I was trying to, what's going on here? Trying to show you this site, and I was actually hoping to get you as a customer here, but there's something wrong with the internet, or I don't know what, that you can actually go there as the client and you can click on the relevancy. So in the case of the hospital, we invited the customer to come to our office and do the training, so that the model or the input that we get from the customer was clicked on that site. So we didn't tell the customer about Drupal, we didn't tell them about the content types, we didn't tell them about any of those optimizations or like what kind of questions like that we could ask, like what content type is more important to you, maybe it's the article, maybe it's medicine, doesn't really matter. They only knew that if I have this word, these results have to be the top. So I'll try to figure out the demo in a bit. I'll first give you some of the basics. So what's machine learning? This is machine learning. Based on training data, we create a mathematical model, and based on the mathematical model, you give it some data, and it has a result. For example, Google has really like a lot of AI or a lot of machine learning models. If you show it a picture of a cat, it will detect that it's a cat. You know, also on the internet, when you submit a form, there's a lot of CAPTCHAs where you have to select stop signs. You've seen that CAPTCHA before? That's actually machine learning, but you are the training. You are telling Google what is a stop sign, and they know it more or less, but some of the details they have wrong. So you're actually helping them to detect stop signs better, or cats, for that matter. So traditional machine learning solves a prediction problem. And 5 years ago, I was working for Acquia at Mollem. Mollem was an anti-spam solution. It's gone now, but it was one of the first ways of introducing machine learning into Drupal. So that's traditional machine learning. You give it content, you have a training data, and it says yes or no or maybe, based on calculations of chance. Okay. So learning to rank is a similar thing. The only difference is that it doesn't give yes or no or maybe. It says this is maybe more important, and this is changing the order so that it's really useful for search results. So that these 3 or 2 green ones actually float to the top. Now, if I go really deep, and I won't spend too much time on this, it's called RankNet. RankNet is basically a library that you can use to create that model. You don't have to know anything about how it works to learn to rank. You can feed it data from SOLR. You can feed it data from Drupal, or the data that the customer actually gives it. This is relevant to me, this is relevant. And it creates that neural net, it creates that model that you can upload into SOLR. SOLR is the technology that you can use to make your searches in Drupal. And it will automatically re-rank or reorder your results. So more scientific explanations on how it works. And this is basically the model that we're going to use in the demo. If we can get it to work. It was working 10 minutes ago. Back to the basics. So we saw the session before, or some of you saw. What's SOLR, or how does it work? I really see a lot of misconceptions in the way that people are building Drupal and using SOLR that are causing even basic searches to go wrong. I actually have an example also in a bit about Ukrainian language that could help you. But very basics, you have a document. It's similar like a table in MySQL, but you don't join tables, just single document. It contains fields. Fields are made of types, and types could be an integer, a string, could be Ukrainian, could be English, could be a specific type. And then you remove the words like the or like any kind of word that is not relevant for your search, and that's done by processors. If this is SOLR or Elasticsearch, it doesn't matter. There's no fight between SOLR and Elasticsearch. If you have that fight, please stop. It's the same technology. It's all based on Lucene. The only difference is the interface. So all of this is stored in an index, and each document is by default standalone. Has a little star, because if you want to do personalized search, that changes a little bit. So try to remember that when you're making searches, because it's important. Don't try to think like it's a regular database. Now let's do a little Ukrainian search. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I tried to look it up, but I cannot read your language. I also don't understand your language. I don't have the Russian example. I only have the Ukrainian language. I apologize. Is this correct? All right. Have you made sites in Ukrainian that you indexed into SOLR? Or has anyone? 1, 2, 3. How does it perform? Does it work? If you would look up daughter, and in your document it says daughters, would that work? Yeah? Huh? Oh, there's a microphone.
X works, exactly.
All right. So let's try it out. So this is actually what happens in SOLR if you configure it correctly. On the left, that's what my Drupal document indexes. On the right, that's what a user searches for. You can see that on the left, I'm indexing daughters, the multiple, the plural. On the right, I made it very difficult for myself. I tried to use Ukrainian in the Latin alphabet, because I heard some people also use that, or you can write Ukrainian in the Latin alphabet. Then I heard today that people don't do this, the Latin alphabet, but I could find it on the internet, so I tried. So what we see is all these processors on the left, from stop words to this morphological filter. And that's actually the key for Ukrainian, this morphological filter, because you can see also on the right, if you look for the Latin version of Ukrainian, it actually translates that in whatever that alphabet is called. And you have daughter here. And on the left, you can also see that daughters is changed into daughter. So you have daughters and daughter. So in your index, you will have both of the words. So when you're searching for any of the two, you'll find the document. If you have never used this tool or this analysis of SOLR, and you're implementing SOLR, please stop and do this first, because this is the only way to understand how it works. It's the only way to understand how your word gets stored in SOLR and why your document is not returning, or why your word is not matching with the word that you have indexed. Okay? Let's see if this... Let me start the search here and continue. All right, so is that clear how it works? In English, it's the same. In Dutch, it's also the same. Also, Ukrainian, I heard, is very complicated because you can actually concatenate words. So you have, for example, grandfather. How would you say that? Grandfather? Grandfather? And it's one word, right? It's the same in Dutch. In English, it's a lot easier. But try to tell SOLR where it has to split to find grandfather for also grandfather. And then I looked it up and I got crazy on the plane, and apparently you can go up to 300,000 characters in Ukrainian, because that's as far as you can go until the first person that was born according to history. So, interesting facts. All right, basic search again. SOLR, you probably have seen or debugged SOLR. You see, let me show you here. Some of you have seen this, the SOLR log. When you're searching for something, it appears. So here, you're looking for cookies. You're looking for cookies in a Drupal field, maybe in the title or your rendered stuff. You're trying to tell him, okay, give me back these fields and limit it to this index and this site. Give me 10 results. All right. So get back to the machine learning. How can you tell the model what is relevant? If you take restaurants, for example, when searching for a restaurant, what do you think is a quality of a restaurant? Like, why would a certain restaurant be better than another? Price? Service. So maybe somehow it's indexed that service has a rating of 4 or 5. Price between your filter. Something else? What? Reviews. The amount of reviews. If a restaurant has 30,000 reviews, number of visitors. Are you using those criteria today in your search? If you're making a restaurant website, how do you add this to the relevance? You don't. I haven't seen it in the Drupal sphere today. So I did it also for recipes. So it's just the basics or the theory. Obviously, this is a demo experience for the hospital. There were different criteria. If it was about financial, we probably know it's somewhat more relevant. It's up to the model to detect how important. It's not up to you to tell search how important it is. It's based on the training data and based on these features, it's called, for the machine learning magic to work and detect how important it is. All right. So this is more or less how it looks like. So the amount of tags a restaurant has might be more important, might also not be. The freshness, that's an interesting one. How recently created was your article? If you're working in a website that just has articles or blogs or any of that, usually how more recently updated or created it is, how more relevant it is. You don't tell how more relevant. You're just saying this is my mathematical thing. So back to Drupal, and I'm going over this really fast. Most of it was covered by Oleg. But if you're looking for best practices, there's a website where you can log in and look how it's configured. And the code can be found also on GitHub. The slides will be published. No need for a picture. But the SOLR best practices are different. So again, a question to the audience. What fields do you index today when working with SOLR? What? All fields. Wrong. What else? Title and description. Somewhat accurate, but still not correct. What?
Meaningful fields. And
meaningful fields. Where do you define the meaningful fields?
the task scope.
In the content type, that's correct. Yeah, where in the content type?
All fields with
Sorry?
all fields with text.
All field. Yeah. What I'm looking for is view modes. Do you know that there's a view mode called search index? Yeah? Do you use it when indexing in Search API? If you don't, stop and go back. Okay? These are the two that I was looking for. There's only two that you need in order to get the most relevant search. It's your rendered HTML from the search index view mode. Stop indexing all the fields. It doesn't make sense. SOLR doesn't need all these different fields. It just needs one blob of text to search in. Okay? I know many of you do this, and I know it's not documented anywhere. And for the database search, it doesn't make any difference. But for SOLR, this is the only reasonable way to get the basic search optimizations, and then you can do the machine learning. Don't do the machine learning if your basics aren't correct. So there's a field that you can add, rendered HTML. You can render it as anonymous because you don't want to leak data for authorized users. And then select the view mode. This is Drupal core since Drupal 6, the search index. Okay. Sometimes we also maybe want to do the meta tags. If we're exposing it to Google, why not expose it to ourselves? But apparently it's very hard. It's not possible today. There's a patch that makes it possible. But if you have keywords, or if you have descriptions of meta tags, or even social media information, those are all real relevant informations to have your internal search. Okay. All the other fields are only useful for facets or the machine learning model. So I'll try to go a bit more quickly. Parse mode for SOLR is direct query. Don't worry if you don't know. Here's a little difference. This is the default. It searches for the both words separately. This is actually what you want. You don't want to search for just chocolate and cake. You want to search for chocolate cake, and the closer the words together, SOLR will show you the more relevant results. Okay, so that's why you do that. You search for just aggregated field and title, and you only need those processors. Again, don't worry, the slides will be online. And then there's the excerpt. This is the little tag or the little text that comes below the search results, similar like Google has. Don't let Drupal generate that for you. Make sure that SOLR generates that for you. Select those two in your Drupal site, and you'll get it from SOLR. And then there's some complicated configuration that you do. Last week I spent, I think, half an hour or an hour to figure it out myself again. But this is the only thing that you need to do to get that excerpt. And then in the view, you can do either rendered item, or just like render it from Drupal itself, and then you have the excerpt, or you pick the fields that you wanted somehow. Okay. So let's see if this works already. For some reason. Okay. So it looks like this. So you have the title, there's some rendered thing, and then the excerpt from SOLR. Okay. Does this work already? All right. This site works, so it's okay for you to go to that site if you want. Otherwise, I'll just show it. The site is dropsolid-search-relevance.ngrok.io. It's an experiment. It's the first time I give this talk, so it's kind of like an alpha version of the talk. And maybe I'll show you as well. So if the customer or you want this result to be to the top, you click on these buttons, and based on this feedback, the results will change. Okay. So now learn to rank. How do you do this in practice? This is the example from the hospital site. Again, very mathematical, but the only two things you have to look at are the ones with the red. Okay. The recall means how many relevant results did appear in my top number, top 10 or top 5 results from all the relevant results I marked as relevant. So you can see before any optimizations of the Drupal site, also really bad search configurations, just the basics, as I explained. Only half of the results that the customer, the hospital wanted, that be on the top, or in the top 10 at least, appeared. That's pretty bad. That's why they lost money. And on the top 5, also only half, so that was more or less okay. After all of the optimizations and the machine learning, we have 91% of the relevant results in the top 10 and 85 in the top 5. So that meant that all the relevant results out of like just 85% of all these relevant results were in the top 5, and that customers of the website found the results that they were looking for, or at least that the auditor of the government was expecting to see. There's a difference, obviously, between an audit and actual people. What you could do is in the feature, look at the page views of a certain result and add that also as a criteria for the model to generate every week. Okay, so this is also a little screenshots on how it looks like for the customer. I'll skip this a bit. And this might also be interesting for those that want to dive deep. Don't try to understand the machine learning. Like, you don't know what's going on. You don't understand the neural net. And to prove this, this is what it generates. There's no words. It only has numbers. There's no such thing as recipe or ingredient or any of that. don't try to understand it. You can generate it, but I'm in the middle. Okay. How many lines, if you really want to know? 7,800. Yeah. Okay. So that's how the model looks like. How do you do this? Once you generate that model, I'll also show you that. The only thing you need to add to your SOLR query, as you had the basics before for me, the query, the fields, etc. Then you add this in SOLR. After you generated the model with the library, you can upload it into SOLR. So all of that is default or native stuff. And it generates a query like this. So you still have your chocolate cake, but after you do the basic search, re-rank all my results. Okay? And then we wouldn't be at a Drupal camp if there was no Drupal module to configure this. We did this for the hospital website in Drupal 7. Especially for this camp, I rewrote the module for Drupal 8. If it wants to load, there we go. Okay. So you can see here, it gives you a list of all the models. I haven't generated it yet, because that's part of our live demo. Yeah. But you can just select it. There's nothing else in Drupal you need to do. The lines of code, I think it's like 20 lines of code. So, not that different. And this is what the hospital had after we applied the model. And now let's train the model. I don't know if any of you went to that website. We can look at the statistics just to show you what the start is. So our start of the demo, it's exciting, a live demo. It's 90% somewhat appear in the top 10, but only 67% appear in the top 5. To give you an example. So for example, for cake, this is what cake looks like. So that's 80% okay. For egg, and I'll do the actual search for egg so you can see. All right, so eggs, obviously, eggs are relevant. But egg sauce is less relevant. I'm just looking to maybe bake an egg. This is an example. This is not real stuff, people. So don't take me on the content. Soft egg, etc. Mexican egg. We don't want eggs baked, etc. All right. So if we look at here, we have this only 2/3 of the results in our top 10. So what do we need to do? Let's train the model. Okay, where are you here? Ooh. Exciting, eh? Now we're training, now we're doing AI. Done. Okay, that wasn't very complicated. Okay. So now we go to the Drupal module, and you can see there's a new model. Let's save it. And let me go back to the application. Now also here, we have a new model. And now 100% of all our results that we wanted to be in the top 10, like all of them, are in the top 10. And 70% of them are in the top 5. So this is machine learning in practice. This is how you can use it for customers to optimize your search results. So, well done, model or AI. Maybe also if you go back to the site, you'll see the same. So if you're looking for egg, if it works, so now we have the same results: eggs, baked beans, bagel, and whatever eggs. And that's the same as you would do here. Let me go back to the search. This is just a copy to make it easier for customers. We're thinking about implementing this in Drupal as well. So this was the before. Here we click on the model and we can see that all the greens, or at least most of the greens, are to the top. Some of them still are not in the top 5 because it's not an exact science. The model tries to find links between all these features and it will actually extrapolate that throughout all of your content. So you're not just optimizing eggs or cake or chocolate cake, but also words that you don't know yet, because it found links between the features and the content. Let's finish it here, so I have some time for questions as well. So conclusion, we created a learning data set, we trained our model, uploaded it to SOLR. We have 30 lines of custom code, which is maintainable, I think. We use this to train all our content and the features, and then re-rank the top 100 results from the basic search. To sum up, and maybe also do some company promotion as well. So Dropsolid is a company from Belgium, and we have a platform as well where customers host their sites, but we also allow this machine learning and all the other complexities that come with a really good experience for your site as a product. So we support, obviously, this machine learning technology. There are some changes you have to do to SOLR, but you can probably figure it out. If you got interested after this talk to work with us, come see me or send me an email. But also otherwise, if you're a client or working for a client that could use this, also let us know. Are there any questions? And thanks for the attention, obviously.
Hi, did you have chance to implement this kind of search in scope of personalization?
For personalization,
Yeah.
we haven't implemented personalization, but we would know how to do it. So there is a way where you can have, for example, the start module, or the module that you can click on stars for content, favorites or something, and then you index only those items as a separate document in SOLR, and you merge them on the fly based on the person that searches. And then the model would be able to know, okay, how many favors do you have a person have? And it re-ranks the results on the individual basis.
Okay, next question is about where do you store user profile? I mean, in scope, like to create his personalization kind of profile. Is it on Drupal site, or it is kind of like also like kind of external storage?
You will also index the preferences of the person in SOLR.
Okay, and then you can like kind of cross them.
Well, you have to have the person, there's the document, and if he liked a document, that's the third document where user and content liked 1 out of 5,
right?
For example. So then you get this relational database, and your SOLR search will become a little slower.
Yeah, that is obvious. Thanks.
Just doing this is usually sufficient to start with, or to end with.
Thank you for your presentation. I want to continue previous question. I also tried to store rendered content in the SOLR, and I figured out the problem with Drupal form. How do you advise to solve this? I mean, the form is rendered, but it doesn't work because it has wrong tokens.
It has wrong what?
Tokens.
Token?
I mean, form ID, form token ID or something
tokens,
like
okay. What exactly from the form do you want to index that needs to be returning?
I don't want to index form indeed, but it already in the teaser.
Well, so that's where the view modes come in. In the search index view mode, you drag down the form so that it doesn't get rendered.
Yes, it's rendered, but it doesn't work. I didn't finish this task indeed. It's
Maybe you can look at it after the session to show you.
Okay.
But in short,
okay, thank you.
If you have here structure, let's see, content types. This is purely for the recipe. I'll zoom in a bit. Here you have search index. This is weird on a big screen. But you can see that all the fields that are in the recipe are indexed here,
No.
but you don't index the label. Huh?
No, I'm index two rendered content, two rendered HTMLs, one for search and one just for displaying.
Right, but this is purely for the indexation. You don't want to index the labels. For example, here also, I didn't want to index the language. The form is usually also a field there, depending on how you created it. If not, you can maybe expose it as a field programmatically and then drag it down so it doesn't get rendered for the index.
I just want to improve performance to get all rendered content from the SOLR.
Let's talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
Then.
Thank you.
3 more minutes. Any final questions? Do you think you're confident to implement this now? Not yet? Yeah, so.
If there are no questions, we will thank you, Nick, for this great presentation, and we'll thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Yes, please. Thank you very much. It's for you. Okay, the next one will be in 10 minutes, and it will be technologies, powered web, and the post-browser era from Alex Shedrow. Thank you.